Thank you so much for coming. Thank you, Product Board, for organizing. Thank you, Jurka, for being here. And our three panelists are already here with us. I hope you are all ready for a great conversation about growth and about trade-offs and growth and PLG in particular. But before we get into that, I have a few questions for you as the audience, so we better understand and can cater to your needs. And my very first question is that how many of you actually heard about product-led growth before today's meetup? Perfect. Almost everyone. That's great. For those of you who didn't, don't worry. You will get to know about it very soon. And please raise your hand if you are currently working at a company that has used or is using PLG, product growth. Okay. Maybe I have to restate it. I think maybe through more. Okay. Product growth. 3, 4 hands so far. Okay, very interesting. So maybe we can talk a bit more about the how to go from sales-led to PLG later on. And then my last question is, raise your hand if you were directly involved in driving some product-led growth strategy within your company. Good. Okay, so 3.5 people. This will be an eventful event. I hope we will all learn a lot. And at the end, I might ask a variation of the same question. Like how many of you understand and know what PLG is, and maybe you will change your answer even to what PLG is. Yeah. And my last thing that I want to go on before we jump into that is like, who are you actually? So I will try to put it into 3 different buckets. First is engineers. Second is product or design. And third is sales/marketing. And the last one will be everyone else. So if you are engineer, could you please raise your hand? Good. A lot of engineers here. I would say roughly 1/4 of you are engineers. What about product/design people? How many of you are here? Oh, yes. Great. A lot of my people here. I love it. Very nice. And then lastly, what about sales and marketing folks? Just 1, 2. Okay. Okay. We need more of you in the room. Next time, bring your friends. And someone else who does something else than that? Great. What do you do, if I may put you in the spotlight? A growth lead. Amazing. Okay, we get to chat afterwards. I'm very curious. Please post some great questions on Slido later on. And any of you. We have Slido here, by the way. Please go on, scan the QR code, ask questions. We'd love to answer them. And actually, one more thing, because this was a request from the panelists about this conversation. It is B2B or B2C. If you are something like B2B, B/B2C, etc., pick your choice in between these two. If you are working for a B2B company, could you please raise your hand? Okay, more than half of the audience roughly. And if you are working for a B2C company, could you please raise your hand? Okay, cool, interesting. Good, so predominantly B2B, but some B2C. Great. Okay, let's jump into it. Let's hope mics are working and are on the right place. And let's go with the panelists. Could we start with you, Michal?
Sure. Hopefully it's working. Hey everyone, my name is Michal Pařízek. I'm a growth product manager. So yeah, one of the product and design guys, but focused on growth and business. And I work now for Mojo, which is a French startup. It's a Y Combinator-backed startup, 6 years old. It's a B2C mobile app focused on creating nice videos for social media. And I'm actually doing product growth there, which is essentially looking after activation, monetization, or retention for these users.
Amazing. Thanks.
I will continue. Good evening, everyone. Hey. My name is Dominic. I'm staff engineer and team lead of the growth team at Product Board. I worked for Product Board for about 5 years. I've been mostly in growth teams during this tenure. And we are a customer-centric product management platform.
Nice intro, thank you. So my name is Kubo Kubiš. I'm head of product and CEO at eTrinity. We are relatively unknown yet, but what we do is that we buy SaaS products, and then we try to grow them and sort of make sure they are profitable and able to sort of function as a successful businesses. So it's a little bit different operating model than traditional startups that are focused only on growth of the revenue and of the customers to, let's say, to demonstrate the metrics in order to, let's say, secure the other investment round. We are trying to sort of run the SaaS companies as a business from, day one since we acquired them. That's all for me.
Amazing. Thank you guys for introducing yourselves. As you can see, we have a great diverse panel. I'm super excited that we have a growth PM in Michal, growth engineer in Dominic, and then we have a head of product in Trinity, multiple different products. So I'm really looking forward to deep dive into all of the products and all of the roles that we have here. And I want to kick this off with a question: what actually is product-led growth?
You are the product growth guy.
Okay, I'll start to provide you that's my kind of definition of how I see it. So I think actually product-led growth, like as of now, or the buzz around product-led growth is tied mainly to like B2B. Since I believe like what happened in B2B is that like 10 years ago, like B2B world or B2B software looked much different than actually today. As in like 10 years ago, actually, the buyers of B2B software wasn't really the end users of the software. So the software was bought by kind of sales or some executives. And what happened is that there was this kind of a wave of consumerization of B2B software, and companies like Slack or Notion or Figma actually kind of pioneered it. And what happened is that actually the end users became the buyers of, or the stakeholders, or the people who actually buy the product and decide of buying the product. And then where I believe like the whole kind of buzz around PLG happened is that actually the product is the thing that drives the sales, the monetization, also the activation of the user. And it's actually, the product is actually driving growth of the company. It's not really just salespeople kind of selling the product, but actually the product itself kind of drives the growth of that's how I see.
Great. Dominic, I would be curious, could you try help us visualize how does PLG look like in product boards? Like I come to product board's website, how do I know that you are using PLG?
Great question. So I will just add something to what Michal said. For me, it's also a distribution model, right? It's about driving your customer acquisition costs down. Traditionally, you would have to spend a lot of money on marketing and sales force to sell your product. In product-led growth, you are designing and making the product itself to sell on its own. So that's how I would define it or try to explain it in like simple terms. And at Product Board, how PLG looks like, it starts from the acquisition. Like when you visit our website, right? You should see, it should catch your eye what the product does and what it can solve for you, what problem it can help you address. And then you go through the sign up. We collect the sign up should be helping you to personalize the experience you will fall into. You fall into the product where we need to explain the value of the product. We need to get you through the setup moment. So we need to get maybe some of the data in so you can start seeing the power and the benefit the product can actually bring to you. And throughout the journey, you can reach what's called aha moment when you realize the value of the product, and then we can actually convert you to a paid customer. So in Product Board, that would be the onboarding and all the journey that lets you through to this point.
Thanks. It's amazing how it's progressed since what Michal described, from you had to come and talk to someone, always to get to see what is there, to the point where you get to see what you will get when you actually will sign up.
All right, so from my perspective, I will try to put it in a, let's say, a little bit more pragmatic point of view. I think that most of the web apps or startups or applications, they have to do some sort of product-led growth, and so, which is exactly focusing on activation, retention, and sort of like onboarding the customers. Nobody expects right now that you are building a digital product and not have this to some degree. So, we can call it product-led growth, but I feel like it's like a necessary part of most of the digital products you are building right now. So that's first thing. And the second thing is that in my opinion, like the complete product-led growth, as is, let's say, the holy grail of a lot of the startups that they want to achieve, is actually achieved by a very small fraction of companies such as Miro or Figma or Notion that sort of acquire the critical mass in the community where actually the users and the product itself can sort of like grow infinitely just by having the users on the platform. But for smaller companies, smaller products, like relying solely on this motion as your growth is kind of sort of impossible in my opinion, and you have to supplement it somehow. You have to do a little bit of marketing, you have to do a little bit of sales to close the big accounts. So yeah, that's my sort of hot take on this.
Okay, so it's build your die, but there should be some salesperson involved to get you buy the product.
I don't think it's PLG or die. I think it's like a minimum PLG is must, and like I can't imagine you building a like a digital product right now without it, at least to some degree. Like analyzing the retention, the activation, the onboarding of the users, the aha moment, like what do you want to show them, who they are, and stuff like that. I would say it's to a degree minimum, unless you have a very special, you know, sales oriented product that you really have to come in person and explain to the end customer how it works. But I don't think that's the goal of a lot of B2B sort of startups that are being funded right now.
Yeah. Michal, when we were prepping for this topic, we discussed about how much should be standardized the journey of PLG of a user, and how much it should be something around custom that that person actually needs. Could you expand on that?
Mm, Yeah, what I meant by that is that like standardization and customization, yeah, like two opposite things, and the PLG is very compatible with standardization. It is not very much compatible with customization. So if your tool or your software or your business relies a lot on customization, and you actually like sell or provide a product which really requires a lot of customization for the end user, PLG is probably not the best motion actually to plug in. So you need to rely more on the sales-led growth, where you actually need a lot of customer support, customer representatives to actually customize the product for you. But the PLG, if you have actually pretty standard product and the user just, I don't know, like insert like a piece of code or just set up a few things like in product board, actually like PLG can look very well.
Great. So we know where PLG is good and where it works. Could you think of an example where PLG really shouldn't be there?
Well, we assume that you are building a digital product.
Yes?
Yeah. For that, if you are building a hardware product, or something that you use only once a year, that's probably not the right fit for PLG.
I would also add that, in my opinion, it really depends on in which stage your company is. If you are struggling to find product market fit and you are having a bunch of customer interviews, as Samo can probably say about his own startup that they are currently
Ouch.
working on, not to put you on spot, but it's very hard to like even start discussing a PLG unless you already have the concept and like the full engine and the value that you want to give the customers, right? So in my sort of opinion, there is a place for PLG, but like you need to find the product market first.
I totally agree. I think product market fit is always like the first thing. If you don't have it, and like any thinking of any growth, it's just like really not in a place.
Great. Now, as we discussed and we found out that a lot of you guys want to learn more about growth, but at the same time, very few of you actually have done the growth part. Maybe you have already done it, but you don't know about it. I would like to put the floor to the speakers and ask them about, who is typically part of that PLG team? And what do they usually implement?
Right. I'll start. I'll cover it a little bit more broadly because the way we function is that we have a bunch of product teams, and each one is sort of administering a different, completely different product. And the motion can look slightly differently in each one of them. We do not have a dedicated, let's say, growth team, because we like to keep the sizes of the teams quite small. So, and I know this isn't the best practice answer, but basically we have very sort of generalist type of people. So usually the whole growth is covered by the CPO and the CMO that are on the product, and obviously some engineering efforts as well. But between the two of them, to be able to design, suggest, and evaluate an experiment, that's something that's like reasonably feasible to expect on a quarterly basis for a bunch of initiatives.
We are quite different. So we have a dedicated growth team. The team is quite big. So we have a website team which falls under growth. As we discussed, it starts with acquisition on the website. We have a dedicated product analyst who helps the team to actually understand the data we collect. We also in the company have a data team. So we have the privilege of having understandable and clear data in the product, which is fundamental to in my opinion, to do growth. And we have an engineering team, right? We work closely with a product manager within the team and a product designer. So the team is quite big, and we have different roles who specialize and really are responsible for their part of the problem.
That's really cool.
Yeah, I'll agree with guys, my Dominic. I think most typically you need to have usually like an engineer and a designer with the PM. That's like the kind of holy trio, how it's called. So that's like the three essential roles which you need to be able actually to do the summer changes. And then data analyst is actually super useful, of course, if you don't have any kind of that skill in either the engineer or PM. Mostly the PM usually have some sort of analytical skills. And then, and then maybe some growth marketer is also kind of nice. So particularly if you're actually also looking into acquisition and how the product actually can drive acquisition, or if you have any growth loop, which actually involves like acquisition, we can maybe touch on that also later. But it depends on the company size. In our case, we are 25 people in the company I work in Mojo. So actually, there's like I actually look after kind of product growth, and I work on the different projects with designer and an engineer. But there's no like established like a kind of PLG team. Yeah, they are so small for that. But the larger companies like Product Board usually have that.
Great. I also think that for many of you, it might be the first time hearing about, growth engineer or growth PM. So I would like to demystify these roles. What do you guys actually do? Mikhail, maybe you could start with growth PM.
Okay, I see as a growth PM as a person as like a product manager who essentially kind of work on a product to meet customer needs and improve the product for the customers. And in my perspective, like growth PM also improves the product, but not really like he improves for the customer, but he mostly cares about the business, and he just kind of optimize the product to be working very well business side. So it sells well, it actually drives acquisition well, it drives virality, for example, or referrals. So essentially it's a PM looking after, I think guys mentioned like the activation, the monetization, and also like the referrals or retention of the actual usage of the product.
Mm-hmm. So just so I make sure I understand it, it's like PM solves user needs and you solve the business problems that you have there.
Pretty much. Yep.
Cool, great. What about growth engineer?
So for a growth engineer, how I think about it is that I would maybe use like let's say pyramid. So you have a software engineer. That's everyone kind of knows what software engineer does. Write codes, deliver features, right? We then have a concept of product engineer who is a more customer-centric engineer, really drives more about the customer problems and not technical solutions. So not really striving to design the perfect system, but deliver value to the customers of the company he or she works with. And then a growth engineer is someone who really makes data-driven decisions on top of being customer-centric. So you look into the data, we have dashboards, and you try to work together with the PM, the designer on the initiatives that might change or bring some outcome to you as a business. And you leverage this, and you also need to be comfortable with the experimental mindset, which experimentation is a big part of PLG. So you need to be suited to write code essentially that will suit for an experiment where you will get learnings, but it can also be a throwaway code, which will go away because you need to do different iteration, different experiment. So, incorporating these techniques into your daily life is what I would say is making the difference between a growth engineer and a product or software engineer.
Amazing. Maybe let's stay on this topic because I'm really curious about the way how you do experiments as product board, and specifically, how do you use data to make decisions and create, you're split between option A and option B. How do you decide which is the right way to go?
So we've talked about it a bit. You need to have the infrastructure first in place. So you need to have a way how to collect analytics, how your users interact and use the product. So we have analytic systems we use and collect. We have an experimentation platform on its own where we define experiments. We use feature flags a lot to provide you with different experiences within the product, and then we collect this data and we use analytical tools to visualize and analyze the data. And when making the decisions, you are asking, like, it's about stating hypothesis before you start with experiment first, and the metric you want to leverage, and then when you are faced with a decision and making a trade-off, you are, if you have enough data and you have really trying to make data-driven decision, the trade-off means that you look on the result which moves the metric or reaches the outcome you want, helps you reach the outcome you want to reach. So it should be, let's say, easy trade-off to make because you know what you are optimizing against, and you are seeing in the data what's the current situation and how maybe two different experiences performed.
Maybe can you guys tell us some example from the companies you work for, like some example of an A/B test you ran or a way how you actually figured something out, like just so we can imagine how does it work?
I mean, sure, it's at the end of the day, it's an A/B test, right? Like you want to test the hypothesis, and the most often that we do something is on the business side or on the marketing side of things, to be frank, because if you are doing A/B tests on product side, in my opinion, you've already built a feature, and what's going to be outcome of the test, that the feature that we've spent 2 months building is bad and we will just not use it. I mean, yeah, probably, but that sounds like waste of time of 2 months of development. So we try to test things mostly on the business side. A lot of tests with pricing that you can very easily evaluate in terms of like an easy A/B test, website test, call to action test, stuff like that. So we try to optimize mostly on this side. This also comes from the fact that our teams are smaller, so we need to leverage them to like on product work that we know has a higher chance of working. So yeah, that's from my side.
Yeah, I'm thinking what to add because it's such a broad topic actually, like experimentation and testing in general. I would maybe emphasize the fact that actually in any test you usually have like the metrics you optimize for, but then you also usually have like some sort of conflicting metrics of actually like usually, like to give an example, for example, when we've just actually done a series of A/B tests on onboarding, and like the goal of onboarding is obviously like increase the activation rate, so percentage of users who actually like finish the onboarding and get to the aha moment and basically get the aha moment of the app and get used to the app. But also one of the actually parts of the onboarding is sort of a paywall in the apps, which is a screen which basically encourages you to buy the pro version. And when you actually optimize your onboarding, you want to increase the activation rate, but on the same side, you don't really want to decrease sort of the percentage of people who actually buy the product, because it could hurt a lot of your revenue. So you usually need to be aware of that. There are the metrics which you're really keen on optimizing for, but there are also some other metrics which are super actually necessary to keep an eye on, and not to actually harm those, because actually could in the long term particularly could actually harm your business.
We mentioned aha moment for the second time, but I'm not so sure that we've defined it actually. So I was just thinking, maybe could you tell us what aha moment is, Michal, and tell us what is the aha moment for Mojo?
Okay, so aha moment is a sort of step in the activation. So activation is sort of a process where users first install or sign up for your service, and then basically get to the state where they understand the service and they get the value of the service. And the aha moment is actually the moment when you get for the first time understand the value of your product basically. And for Mojo, it's how we define is actually that you get first time you share a video with the Mojo. You basically create a video with the app and you share it. So that's sort of like the moment because you realize how easy it is and how beautiful content you can create. So that's how we define it.
Great. What about the concept of growth loops? And we got a great question on Slido. I want to quote it because I think the phrasing is important here. If PLG would really be just about product selling itself, wouldn't all B2C products that don't use salespeople be product led? And I really think the question in broader terms is asking a lot about what is the value of product led growth and what does it really bring to the table other than people buying your products? So sorry to put two questions at once. So let me disperse it. Maybe let's start with the product selling itself, and then we'll get to the second part of it.
Looking at me.
Yeah. I know you are very passionate about this one.
Look, it's we can argue about the definition, and there is probably somewhere written that is 100% true. And I don't want to dodge the question, but for me, a lot of I'm generalizing a lot, but like in my opinion, B2C mobile apps are usually mostly product led. It doesn't include all of the steps in the framework. It doesn't, include, it can include only some. It really depends. It's very specific product by product. And, it's up to you how you decide to name it at the end. And there will obviously be some sort of involvement of marketing and other business function, maybe sales too, as well for, larger customers or something like that. It's not, in my opinion, it's not either or. At the end of the day, the objective is to grow the business, to grow the revenue or EBITDA or whatever metric you decide to, and that's like the ultimate lagging indicator that's above all of the product metrics, all of these. So whatever the name of the framework or methodology is, at the end of the day, you want your app to grow and be profitable, or at least like secure the next round of investment. So for me, I would say I would be okay with saying that like a lot of the B2C apps are primarily product-led growth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would also add an yeah, obviously, I think the product-led growth is, I don't know, probably like any company who is only product-led growth. It's always like combination of different motions, and it's just like different kind of layers. So it's usually like maybe one of them is kind of the major one, for example, product-led, but there is like on top of that, there is like a sales-led. In almost any companies, there is a in some kind of way, there's like a marketing-led, because every company does some marketing, even if they sort of don't invest much, they do some marketing by nature. So there's always kind of all of them, and it's just about like the share and how much resources you and time you actually dedicate to each of them.
Great. I know Dominic. I chatted with Dominic before talking about how Product Board does it, how is their mixture of PLG and sales looking like, and I think it's a great example to bring up. Could you explain to us how does Product Board do it?
Sure, and it's building on a lot of what was said here, right? It's not exclusive, and there are multiple motions to working together and collaborating. Product Board is B2B company, and we do have a sales team, right? We have a enterprise sales force who sells our product to enterprise customers. And what we do is a subset mainly of a PLG, and that's product-led sales. So we try to make sure we bring customers to a point where it makes sense for the sales team to reach out to them. It's called product qualified account or product qualified lead, finding those leads within your customers. And this is how you can actually collaborate with the sales team, so they don't have to clash and go against each other and say like you are, taking revenue from me. It's more of like you are nurturing customers for them who have much bigger percentage of conversion or close of the deal, because they have already experienced the product, they understand it, and it's much easier to expand or close a bigger deal with them at that point.
Great. So PLG is a way how to do more with sales.
It's actually exactly like Dominic says. Yeah, I think actually that's super powerful actually when the sales and product like collaborate together, and then the sales actually, if they wouldn't have that product qualified leads, they would need to write cold emails via LinkedIn, or like they would need to do like this outreach, which is pretty ineffective, or like it's actually super hard to get that working very well. So actually the product qualified leads are actually like great actually leads for them to close.
Maybe one thing I will try to, not necessarily challenge, but let's say hypothetical scenario.
Uh-huh.
You spend a lot of money on product growth team, and they produce product qualified leads. And thanks to some initiatives they did. First is, how do you attribute it to like the product led initiatives and to the growth team that hey, we actually brought the product qualified lead. And the B is, if you would compare all of these spend across the time that the product growth team existed versus how many SDRs and account executives you would need in order to land this account, like it's not a straightforward black and white sort of answer to it, right? Like it's very hard to, in my opinion, like really attribute the value of the closed deal, of the revenue, how much does it go to product led, how much does it go to sales and stuff like that. So it all works together. It's not just like one thing or the other. Yeah. So if somebody would say, we're not going to do any product led and we'll do just sales, I mean, they might have been successful. Like, why not? They'll just need to have a bigger sales team. I'm not saying it's 100% true all the time, but there is a way to balance these levers.
Just to react on it, you mentioned it, and I think the problem is the scale, right? Like with sales team, you have a linear scale. You need to hire more sales representatives to sell more deals. What PLG helps you to is to not make it linear, but maybe exponential, or like there's no reason to hire more people to just get those leads.
Yeah, as you can see, we all really love PLG. But I have to ask, and back to that sales motion a bit, when you, Kubo, for instance, you probably have a lot of experience managing 8 different products. How many of them actually are PLG?
Again, like what is PLG? Like one way to answer is that all of them, and the other way to answer is none of them. But I would lean towards all of them. In all of the products, we are measuring, we are actively tracking basically 4 stages of the customer sort of journey through them, which is like they come in, they register, they have the aha moment, and they subscribe. And this is very much abstracted because the products are different, but we need to have some sort of unified like way how to look at them. So, all of our features that we prioritize, that we develop, we want them to have a direct impact on one of those sort of milestones in the product, which is, you can argue that is also to a degree product-led because you want to improve the activation, you want to improve the retention, that's the goal of these product features that we are building. At the same time, we invest a lot of time into marketing, and we outsource a lot of the experimentation that could be argued that can be done on the product side. We outsource, like we use it through our marketing team. So for example, a lot of the, signals that you can have in the product, right? Like customer did something, or customer, they reached some sort of moment that you want them to know about. So instead of like creating some direct impact right away in the product, pop up, whatever, like we just send them an email, and it's pretty effective, and it's super easy to do in the marketing team. So that's the sort of 80-20 approach that we are trying to take without actually spending a lot of the engineering resources that we have. We are trying to do the experiments on the business side as well.
Okay. Michal, I wanted to ask a follow-up on Kubo's response, actually, because I'm very curious about, because you have a background also in marketing, but also in growth. Where do you draw the line between what is considered PLG and what is considered marketing? Thank you, Honza. Honza is the one who asked it, not me, though. Use the Slido.
Okay, what is what is like a line between like marketing-led growth and product-led growth? Yeah, that's tough question. I'd say like marketing-led growth would be probably like the growth which is just mainly powered by advertising spend or mainly like powered by marketing costs, either like advertising or like brand marketing, etc. And kind of pure product red would be like a product or growth where actually you don't have a lot of spend on either marketing also sales, but actually like the product itself kind of distribute himself like virally, which is actually very rare. So I don't think that actually there is a lot of companies which are kind of sort of like a pure PLG. I think that says there's always some kind of marketing and sales involved, but like I would cross the line kind of there. Like what are the sort of maybe actually what is I would maybe across the line and like how many of your new users are actually acquired sort of organically or with some marketing, which is pretty actually difficult to like get because of the all complexity of attribution. But there are ways how you can sort of at least estimate, use some surveys, or even like diving into attribution. But let's say 80% of your users are driven by marketing campaigns, you probably not product-led growth, but actually if 80% of your new installs are driven by word of mouth or like organically, then you are very likely be a very kind of PLG product or company.
Okay, good. I think because of the way how our audience has been set up from the beginning, is that all of you are here thinking about doing PLG probably, but haven't really done PLG. I want to talk about Kubo's favorite topic, which is PLG transformation. So right now you're probably working at a sales lead company or something like that, and you're in here listening to this talk thinking, what good practices can I bring from PLG to our company? Where should I even start? So where should I start? How do I know?
Right. So from my perspective, it's about supplementing the motion that you already have, right? And in again, as a step back, I there is a lot of companies that can be named that are sales led, but I don't think it's again like a vast amount. Like you would truly have to get all of the leads directly from sales, from cold calling people. Again, it's a mix, and I think most of the companies are like on the marketing side led growth in terms of acquisition of the new users. And regarding like product led growth, unless you have some ways of, let's say, having one to many relationships like in the users that are using the product, where one user can invite more users and then that gets scaled to like a degree of you will have like an organization there and multiple teams and stuff like that. It's very hard to like say we will be relying only on the product led growth. So in my eyes, you can start not on the acquisition part of the product led growth, but on the retention part, where in your sort of like product journey, as you have some data about the users, you will look into the retention and the sort of the conversion or the aha moments that the users are having. And the more you optimize for this, the better your like actual retention and churn reduction is, then you can look into the other areas. But I would say like this should be the first and the most crucial parts that you will look into if you want to optimize something and start calling it a product-led growth.
Yeah, I would maybe also like sort of do follow up. Then I think the sort of also kind of natural sort of transmission from let's say sales-led growth to like product-led growth is to think of like what parts of your product can you actually give to the user for free or for like free trial before actually asking for a credit card. So that's sort of like a kind of typical example is that sort of the sales-led company, like let's say Salesforce, something like that, would actually allow you to use sort of, I don't know, Salesforce Lite, something like that is like a maybe stupid example, but actually giving you something free, so actually you can give it a try, and then you can monetize them later on. So actually like enabling them actually to do it, so actually access it without any kind of friction, that's sort of one of the aspects of product-led.
Just want to add that there are also examples where this doesn't work. So adding friction can actually be good. some products which are very hard to set up or get used to, they can actually be harmed by giving out free trials and making it easy for customers to sign up. So you need to really think about the context of your product before applying anything what we say here.
Great. We'll get back to that in a second.
There's one more thing. I think there was a great point. Like if you have a enterprise grade product that you are selling to large B2B customers, it's not a weekly thing to set it up. Like you have to do whole internal journey in that company and show it to somebody and prove the value and stuff like that. And 1 or 2 week trial is not enough. So that in that case, in my opinion, the bigger you are building the product, the bigger ACV and the bigger customers, the more you have to consider some sort of freemium model that has like some usage limitations, right? Like you can use the product fully, but only to a point of, you know, doing X of something. I don't know, but you know the point that I'm trying to make.
Yeah, you're always trying to get them to aha moment before they actually commit.
But give them time.
Yes. Yes. Time is everything. Right timing is everything. Yeah. I also want to point out on something that you mentioned slightly earlier, and that is that you would say that the best way to go in the beginning is to use PLG on retention. But maybe we can see PLG isn't just to sign up and for acquiring, but also for retention. Maybe we can get to one of my favorite topics. I'll push it a bit. And this is like in sales, you have funnels. In here, you have loops. Michal, could you pick this up?
Yeah,
We
happy
love
to
this.
do that. Yeah, I'm actually a big fan of growth loops. Growth loops, like maybe like an example of before actually like describing is that like a growth loop, like a typical growth loop, actually, who knows like Calendly, who knows that software for actually easy scheduling? I guess like a lot of people. So Calendly is like a kind of really powerful growth loop where actually you actually get usually the invite from anyone to schedule like a slot, and then you find out, okay, that's a really cool, actually I would like to use that, and you are easily hooked up and you can sign up. So what's actually growth loop is that you get some sort of input, which is users, and then generate definitely some output, but the output is sort of driving more input. So like it's sort of like an infinite kind of loop. So the output is driving more inputs. So that's like the way how companies like Calendly and other can scale a lot, because they can actually like multiply the number of users or number of like customers just by sort of like filling more people into like that funnel. Is not really a funnel, but it's the end users kind of coming back. The output is becoming the input, like if it's understandable.
Great. So what happens if this growth loop really works really well, Kubo? Can you tell us an example from one of the companies?
We're not really using the terms of growth loop, so
Sure. So
I mean, to be frank, we are sticking to traditional funnels, and as I said, like the best things, like the key things that we are looking at are the gates, the key moments that we have in the funnels, and we are trying to optimize for them. And we are really trying to tie to the business metrics themselves. So I wouldn't say that we've spent enough time on individual products to make this full like a growth loop analysis. So yeah, I can't necessarily comment on that too much.
okay, so maybe I'll spin it up a bit and ask Honza's question. Honza, you're a real MVP. Thanks for pushing this today with me. And what is the one single feature / change which had the biggest impact on growth that you guys did?
I can start. This goes way back, like 4 years ago. We've been looking into improving activation of or improving the number of integrations you make when you sign up for product board. Integrations bring customer feedback. This helps you understand the value of the product faster. And we've had this very simple idea. We will put a banner in the app that will let you know that you can integrate with Jira and other integrations. And I was like, back then thinking like, you know, is banner going to save us? You know, it was probably one of the most successful things. It brought the metric over Like the success rate was over 197%. I never imagined that something so simple would drive so many integrations with Jira and other integrations we support in Product Board, and it was very simple change. So I am giving this example specifically because you don't have to really do something fancy. Things like banners, which show you that it even exists, and the user doesn't have to go to settings and figure out that there's actually some sort of integration, and you just put it there blankly. It can really work. So this is one example I would mention here.
I can add to this. I have similar story. So in one of our products, we have 174 upsell points. And you know what works the best? The big dumb green button that says upgrade now. And that drives 50% of our upsells. So, you know, it's specific for the product because in that particular product, people upgrade when they need to. So when they hit some sort of limit, they see the big dumb green button, they press it and they upgrade. So it's not, you know, that they are necessarily driven to it, but you know, it's one thing that drives 50% of the upsells versus 173 others that, you know, drive the rest. So it doesn't have to be super complicated. So that's one thing. And maybe one more stuff. I actually asked these RCPOs and tried to find some decent examples. We didn't necessarily change the pricing. We changed the billing. So for example, we start to we set up the Stripe a little bit differently, and we start to auto-renew like a queue for customers in one particular product. And boom, they just, you know, if they forgot to renew it, like we would automatically renew it for them. They didn't cancel, growth went up. It can be simple as that.
Yeah, and auto renewal actually worked actually super well for Avast as well when I worked a couple of years ago. So I definitely agree with that it's a way to grow. I would maybe mention in the case of Mojo, there are like maybe like the technical things. I work a lot in monetization, and there are actually maybe like actually three things which actually helped to boost monetization a lot actually last year. One was like pretty obvious. It's like price testing. I think the price testing is one of the levers which is like pretty powerful. It's quite easy to do. Like not so easy to interpret the results correctly, also short term and long term, because you can easily sort of push a lot of new revenue easily by increasing the prices, but you need to also look after renewals and project through some proxies, maybe how that revenue actually transform into sort of like 13-month revenue, something like that. But prices are actually usually great. I totally recommend. And the second sort of really good sort of idea to test is how you present your plan. So usually your products have like a monthly plan, yearly plan, or like different pro plan and different sort of usually different kind of plan portfolio, and it's super important how you actually present it. So for example, in Mojo, we had like monthly and yearly plan, and the yearly was pre-selected, so it was super easy actually to just continue. But we put it on the next level that we actually kind of sort of really hide it, but we kind of hide the monthly plan under view all plans link. So actually when you open the app and the paywall, there's just kind of, you subscribe for the yearly plan. And you can get to the monthly plan if you really want, but actually just sort of that design change and even like making the yearly plan stand out even more actually had a really good impact on even pushing more yearly plans. And then it's also good to play how you actually sort of visualize the prices. For example, like a really like chess which really surprised me, maybe the biggest surprise for me last year was that we present the prices for the yearly plan, and then we had like we had sort of we tested the equivalent of monthly prices adding to the yearly plan. So it's like, okay, 60 for yearly, and it's only $7 for a month, and that just adding that little line actually had a really good boost, particularly in sort of lower income regions like South America, and that was actually like super powerful for actually driving even more yearly plans and driving the revenue.
Wow. Playing around with pricing is a dangerous game, but I love that you managed to pull it off. But sometimes even great experiments fail. What are the most common reasons why PLG strategy fails?
I think it's a difference between like experiment fail and PLG strategy fail, because that's like this strategy. I think that's when experiment fail. Like it's super normal. Like each of us, and I guess also you. Like it's just that's how it goes, and it's like that's life. Sometimes it's even more sort of impactful in the long term when you actually fail, because you learn maybe even more actually when you succeed. So that's actually super okay. But when PLG strategy fails, in my opinion, a lot of times because the product doesn't even have product market fit. That's what I sort of see a lot, that is just no product market fit. Or the product market fit is very low, so the PLG doesn't. The PLG needs a strong product market fit to be actually really working.
I just want to reiterate, like, you should be failing in PLG, right? Like the experimentation, the failure is not failure in sense of the term as we know it. It's a success in a way that you get learnings, and those are the most valuable. You learn about your customers, about your product, and if you are not failing enough, essentially, it can also mean that you are maybe spending too much time on analysis, right? Like you should, if every experiment you have done so far were successful, it begs a question on how much time you spend actually analyzing prior to making that experiment to really succeed. Because I would assume the failure rate should be, there and noticeable.
And maybe from my side, if PLG fails as a motion, I would say like you have to go back to the drawing board and reevaluate your assumptions about like what PLG is and what do you expect from it, and exactly like whether you have a or not product market fit.
Yeah,
If it fits the business strategy of the product.
totally, or maybe just your business is not really kind of aligned or like really fit for product led growth. Like, yeah, you have like super neat, super strong, like super difficult implementation, or the product is super customized and stuff like that.
So if the boat isn't going full throttle up front, it's sinking more, I think PLG won't save it. Well, here you heard it. Firstly, it needs to work, then it can scale. And that's what's all growth about, right? But for it to grow, you need to align the team around it, right? So I'm really curious, actually, if every one of you could answer, because you have such different perspectives on this. It's like, how do you align the team around PLG strategy? And I especially, when there is someone who is against it, I don't know, a sales guy wants to hit their quota and is afraid PLG will eat into their earnings.
I mean, that's bold assumption, but no. Look, salespeople are supposed to get their quota, and whether it comes from marketing or PLG doesn't matter. If it shouldn't be ever a sales versus product fight, right? That's one thing. And but regarding the aligning over the PLG, um, frankly, we've never had this challenge because we are trying to prioritize a roadmap like in a relatively standard fashion, and some features are directly connected to PLG, and we are very strict about, hey, this gets planned into the quarter, this doesn't. Usually we have some very strict estimations of the business value this is going to bring versus the cost is going to take. So we are usually aligned on the prioritization of the roadmap on a quarterly basis, and we have actually this is the time when we are having these discussions before the quarter starts. We want to be aligned, and we want to not question it anymore.
You ask about the team. I think it's more a question of company, right? It's and if and when it's a question about company, it's also having support and buy-in from the leadership, right? You need to have that to establish that PLG is something we decide to do, and it's also something that really doesn't go against anything else. But we are trying to find the collaboration, the symbiosis between PLG, sales, marketing, and building the team or the initiatives around that.
Yeah, I actually totally agree with that, because actually pushing PLG bottom up is super difficult. You need to have buy-in from the leadership. Does it work? Does it? So actually, you need to have that buy-in. Ideally, actually, it should come from the CEO or from the whole leadership. And if it doesn't come from leadership, you need to get that sort of buy-in, and it needs to go top to bottom, then to from let's say the engineers or the PMs to the leadership team. You can't actually, because it's so kind of Hopefully it's going to be better. Yeah, so because it's so kind of across all the company, it just touches all the roles like sales, marketing, product, engineering, customer support. It needs to go kind of across the company.
It was a great question on Slido, which I've just seen. So we are getting to it right now. And when you were talking about the best things that you could come up with and growth in your companies, people are asking, where do you draw the line for dark UX pattern? There is also an anonymous user that says that he's intrigued to what extent this could be potentially some dark patterns as well. But I'm mostly curious about, in general, how are you thinking about dark patterns in UX, and how do we not all get addicted to TikTok?
All right. So that's a very good question, and I think it touches on the topic of how do you want to run the business, and like what are your values and stuff like that. And it depends on like what is your North Star, right? And we can all say that at the end of the day, it's in my opinion, it's the growth of the product. And I don't think there will be a lot of challenges if we say, hey, let's use some sort of dark pattern in order to kickstart the growth. I would bet my ass that 9 out of 10 CEOs would say yes, let's go for it, we need the growth, right? And we are not building TikToks, we are building normal products that people can unsubscribe from. And it won't hide the unsubscribe button or something like that. They are always free to do that. So that's one thing. And the other is, from our perspective, UX, and that's unfortunate, but right now is more on the, like, let's say, needs to have basis. We are not prioritizing it that much. So we could do definitely like better on that front. But then again, like we are prioritizing based on the like potential business results that we want to see from these features. And sometimes our approach is, let's do this 80-20, let's not over engineer this, let's not overcomplicate it, let's build it and see how it works, because we feel like this is something that we want to prioritize. But regarding dark patterns, like if it's something super shady, we don't want to do it, obviously, but usually things like these don't even come up, to be honest. So, yeah.
Uh, those are mostly prevalent in B2C, I would say.
Yeah.
In B2B, like your brand and the perception your customers have and the market has around you really doesn't allow you essentially to do those dark patterns, because it would hurt your business way more than the gain you would get by someone missing the subscription window. It doesn't make sense much.
Maybe just to follow up, like if you also have some sort of customer support and people will come and say, hey, I need to cancel my subscription because I forgot to cancel it like one day, before or something like that. Those are also the moments where you decide how you approach these things. And, if you treat customers as normal people, like this shouldn't ever be a problem, even if sometimes your UX can be lacking.
I would just maybe add that usually the black patterns, they work very well in the short term, but in the long term, yeah, they don't usually work that well because of brand harms and stuff like that.
To those, like there's an example of Netflix, right? Like who actually message the customers, and they were outbounding the fact that you have a subscription you are not using and that you might consider unsubscribing. So they made this pro-customer decision and informed their users, and probably the marketing that was brought up by this action outweighed the lost revenue that was implied by few folks unsubscribing from Netflix.
Yeah, okay. We've darkened up, let's lighten up this time. And I want to stay with the topic of the customers. I know customers are very close to all of your hearts, and I wonder, how do you involve them in the decision-making process, especially when you have a tough trade-off decision to make on growth side?
You need to say, if only there would be a product for this.
This wasn't planned, by the way. Tough audience.
I mean, obviously, the best features you build are the ones that are solving customer problems, right? And the best features you build also sort of should bring the business results that you want. So, in my perspective, this should be aligned. saying that we are prioritizing the things that will drive the most business, solve the most customer problems. Sometimes there can be disconnect in that, but always when we are prioritizing, all of the features is tied to like a solving actual customer problems. Sometimes there are just business initiatives where, like increase of a price isn't really a pro customer move. That's just pure of a business move. But then again, like if you feel like your market positioning warrants that you can have a higher price, um, you know, is there an argument to be made that you shouldn't be doing it just because of the customer? Like at the end of the day, if you are a little bit selfish, you are running your company, you are not doing this sort of pro bono business for the customers, right? So I think there needs to be some sort of balance between these two things.
I totally agree.
Great. Okay, and a great question from Alex came through, and it's, what's your take on recent tweet from Linear CEO? Craft/quality is the new growth hack. In agreement? I see.
Yeah, well, I think just probably can't argue with that, and I think it's like in a long time, it's basically the product-led growth because yeah, craft/quality means like a really good product, and then if you share a really good product, then like based on product-led growth, you should be like selling that a lot. Of course, like it's not. I think it's not just the product actually. You also need to nail the distribution, so it's just really not just the product itself. As we said, just there's a pure product-led growth doesn't really exist. You always usually need to layer some other sort of motions. But no, I actually feel that the sort of result of the PLG movement and buzz is that like, we actually have much better products for us as an end user because the products needs to be better because actually we are the people who actually choosing the products we work at in the company. So and we want to work in the good products. So I think that's actually pushing the bar high, which I found is one of the great outputs of PLG for like anyone.
I want to ask, like, who knows Linear? It's essentially a software which is a competitor to Jira. And the promise that they went to the market and like a lot of the brand is that we are better Jira and we are like optimized for developers. People hate Jira. So they also use this, like the tweet he posted is in a sort of marketing for them because they want to bring people to Linear from their nemesis, which is Jira. I used Linear and I think it's a great product, but it's also great to think that or remember that they had some issues with their product experience and their craft. They had a problem with scaling and it was not really working for customers with larger amount of data. So it's in my opinion it's a bit of marketing in the tweet too, and you need to know the whole picture to really understand how they perceived and how they built on marketing around the craftsmanship they do within the company.
So that's also a growth hack. Cool.
But yeah, can you repeat the quote once more?
Huh? Well, I already clicked it through, but it is craft versus craft/quality, and is the new growth.
Yeah. Okay. So you can say this if you are Linear or Atio or like brands and products that invest very, very heavily into their brand, and they can say that we are the craft brand. And I would argue to a degree, like Product Board is this as well. And we love it for it. We love it for the design. But maybe my question here is that, like, what is a successful product, right? Like, we have seen and acquired a lot of products that have hundreds or 100,000 of MRR, and they are like objectively not crafty at all. They are like, from design point of view, that was the priority 3. That like, if you are solving a customer problem and you have decent enough marketing and they find you, you don't have to be crafty. And if you are cheaper than the crafter competition, sure, I mean, they will still buy you. So there is this real world also of, like, let's say cheaper, slightly not as crafty products that are growing as well and that are very, successful. And it's that those crafty products have great marketing. You see them, you like them, they are very nice. So it's very easy for them to say this, but it's sort of a survivorship bias, right? Like, imagine you building your startup now and saying, hey, we are all about craft and great design and stuff like that. Like, who cares? Nobody, right? Like, you are just trying to prove your product market fit. So again, super depends on where you are.
Definitely. And actually, talking about startups, there is a great question in the Slido, which says, what would be some tips for extremely early stage companies, pre-product market fit, what they can do from the techniques you would consider PLG?
Your specialty.
I will do this. I will answer very briefly, but then I also want to hear the Kubos and then Dominic's answer because he was also running his startup before. But my brief thing about it is that you should start by figuring out the retention the same way how Kubo did, and once you have the retention figured out, then start tricking your customers into acquiring things PLG. So what we are right now doing is that instead of you coming and book the demo, we are letting you sign up as if you are about to get to the product, but in reality, we are then like, I'm sorry, but we don't have the product in front of you yet. So then you get to it. So there is multiple different ways how you can experiment around it. This is just one way around it, but I would really try to be crafty, but in a very bootstrappy, very cheap way about it.
I mean, you need to solve the product market fit first. Like, if you are a startup, I assume you are trying to prove some sort of hypothesis that you have. You are very early, very scrappy. Several people, it's a team of 5. I don't know. If you are focusing on PLG and on some sort of app without having the traction first, and again, it's really very specific company to company, but I would say that it might not be the best focus of your time. I would spend much more time trying to talk to customers and to really nail down the problem hypothesis that you have, and then figure out the leanest way how to solve it, so you can prove that this works and this is the space where you can then invest more into.
Or just maybe add that one thing we discussed here, which is like sort of PLG, is experimentation. Like, you need to experiment and test and iterate, and I think that's actually super important for early startups and early ideas. I think the speed of iteration is crucial for getting product market fit and getting success. So it's really there's a huge correlation between how fast you can iterate and how fast you can actually react and change and release in getting the success.
And when you say iterate on what?
Iterate on the product itself, and on ideas, and you just try to try this feature, you try targeting this audience, and you're basically iterating on product market fit. That's I think how you can actually get there.
Good. And we haven't talked about friction much, but there's a question on friction. I wonder, what about friction? Do you use friction when you do product-led growth? What is even friction? And and why would you want it inside of your self-serve journeys in product-led growth? Yeah.
Right. I think friction can actually be good. I mentioned it before, right? Like, if you have really complicated product, there needs to be some friction for the customer to really decide if they are going to spend the time setting it up and using it. There are type of products which require this, and it's hard to get around it. You can try doing freemium, you can do free trials, and you can see that some metric you might choose is going up, but as Michal mentioned, you might have some guardrail on another metric and you see that tanking, and that might be the reason that the person, the customer really didn't hit the setup moment even, and you are losing money. Friction doesn't have to be necessarily bad for you. It depends on what type of product you're really building. It doesn't make sense to just put friction there for having a friction, but you need to understand what persona you are targeting, what's your ICP, and then designing the experience around it, and not really going with some practice you read on Twitter.
Guys, do you have any examples of like friction that you like that helps? Yeah.
I got one example. It's not really my app, but it's a great case study from like mobile apps industry. There's one app in a coaching sort of area, and they had like a really long onboarding, like 40 screens, for example. It was like super long to get through the onboarding, and that onboarding actually works super, super well. And the reason by that is like that a lot of friction by actually in that onboarding was also like causing that actually the onboarding was using a lot of sort of like a questions like the coach is using, like what's your motivation, why do you get up from the bed every day and stuff like that. And actually the user, by going through the onboarding, got already sort of like a feeling that the app is actually really good because he asked really good question like a good coach is asked. So actually that friction was also a lot of value for the user, and then sort of assure the user that actually this app should be really good for him. So actually that's why it actually worked very well for that case.
Want to add, like general wisdom will tell you that the longer the sign up, the bigger the drop rate, right? But in this case, it paid off, and there's also a good case study from a startup named Equals. They are a spreadsheet engine essentially, and with AI, and it's a smart Excel. And in their case, they went with a free trial. Before that, you had to put in a credit card first, so there was a friction. You are putting a credit card up front, and you haven't tried the product yet. This is a lot of friction for a lot of potential customers. But yeah, Kubo hates it. But in their case, this actually they had to revert essentially back, because they saw that even though they saw many more trial users, those trial users didn't set up their worksheets, and they didn't reach any setup or aha moment, and they were just blankly going to the product and not converting. So in their case, they actually went back, introduced the friction back, and they saw the ARR, essentially the ultimate metric, go up.
Amazing.
Before I go to the question, two things that I will keep from this is, what even is friction? I love that. And the second is like, what friction do you actually like? And the first thing I thought was like, when you brake in your car, that's the friction that you like. It saves your life. Anyway, without my without my good sense of humor, each friction in the product should have a purpose, right? Like if you put it there without knowing why, then it's the better bet is not to have it there. But if you do like a purposeful experiment and trying to make something harder or something blocked or whatever, then sure, yeah. But like you have to know why you had it there, and you have to see the impact of the of what it does in the product. From my perspective, we are not utilizing this that much. Besides the standard, like if you want this feature, you have to go on a higher plan, which is to a degree of friction, but I think it's like just a standard upsell motion.
Thanks. Well, we are approaching the end, but before we go for it, I wanted to ask if someone has a burning question in the audience. Even it can already be in Slido, but if you want to ask it. Good. So either we are covering the topic well, or everyone is already asleep. I hope it's the first. And then if I go towards our last question of the evening, and that is, many of these people came here to understand what growth really is, how does it look like, and how does it look like in the sense of PLG. And I wanted to ask you, what are your favorite resources? Where did you actually learn about PLG, and what would you recommend people to go on and study up?
I mean, if we don't give the same answer, it will be weird, but the biggest two resources, in my opinion, on product management and PLG is either scour Lenny's podcasts and newsletters. That's one thing, and the other is Reforge, which has really great program with like really good things on PLG. And otherwise, I'm not sure if Intercom had something, but there is a lot of good, great case studies that you can sort of sort through.
Mm-hmm.
I thought you are going to say Elena Verna first.
She was on Lenny, so, yeah.
So I'm going to mention that. as the first one here, I think that's an obvious choice. She's amazing. She's now leading growth at Dropbox. And then I really like Leah Taharin. She's more focused on B2B, and her blog is really great on how to use PLG, what's product-led sales, and she has a lot of resources on that.
Good. I would maybe add one name which doesn't was actually said yet. It's called Kyle Poyer. It's also like a great guy, and he writes a blog about PLG, and yeah, this I'll totally recommend.
Amazing. I love how before nearly no one had their phones on, and right now we are talking about resources. Everyone is writing them down. It's great to see. We maybe have a question. The last two names.
Kyle Poyer. I'm not sure how it's actually spelled.
Kyle Polar.
P-O-Y-I-R, maybe.
Yeah.
Elena Verna, I think.
And Leah Tarin.
Elena Berna, Leah Taharin, and I can also add Adam Fishman.
Yes, yes. And Brian Belfer, of course, the founder of Reforge. But it's all a great lineup. And also, thank you so much for listening in, for tuning in today with us. And before we depart and start eating again, I wanted to ask you, before we started this session, I asked you how many of you have worked on something PLG. We had roughly 3 hands up. Right now, when we defined PLG a bit further and went into it, how many of you actually worked on something PLG related? Good. We've more than doubled. That's great. So that means that you're... That's amazing. I'm glad that we've all learned something new. It's been a lot of fun. Thanks, Product Board, a lot for hosting, Jirka for organizing. Thank you, guys, for the panel. I really enjoyed it. And with that, thanks. Enjoy. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.